Hello all, Old Geek again, and today's video is inspired by something I saw in a Facebook group regarding AD&D. A contributor was testing out one of the methods for character stat generation in the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, and he posted his results to the Facebook page. What then followed were a number of over-the-top reactions. Most of those replying had ignored what he'd written and had simply reacted to the picture that he supplied. He was accused of cheating, of using weighted dice. What he had done is that he had tested method 3 from the Dungeon Master's Guide, and those who were overreacting had ignored that fact. So, here we go. A video explaining each of the supplied stat generation methods in that first edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide. I have in each instance created a party of 5 characters, as that is a common party size. So let's take a look at those methods and compare the results. I did this yesterday afternoon off work. What a worthwhile way to spend a day off. Note here that there are no stat generation methods provided in the Player's Handbook in first edition AD&D. All of these are in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and it is up to the DM which method is used. None of the methods are 3d6 in order. That was the default method in the various versions of basic D&D and in AD&D 2nd edition, but it was not expected to be used in first edition AD&D. Gygax also clearly stated that he believed that PCs should be exceptional individuals, recommending they typically have 2 stats of 15 or higher each. I'm also not going to be looking at method 5 of stat generation, which was the method that was in the Dungeon Master section of Unearthed Arcana, because in my opinion that method is an absolute abomination. So, method 1, the method that I have almost always used for both versions of AD&D, and the method that I've used when I've played 5th edition D&D as well, and that is to roll 4d6, drop the lowest and rearrange the stats to taste. Here are the 5 sets of attributes that I rolled using this method. I have not assigned any order to these attributes, as that is irrelevant for the purpose of this experiment. Firstly, note the variability. While some claim this to be unfair, I believe it to be one of the strengths of this method. Certainly set C appear to be very strong. Most of the classes beyond the core 4 of Fighter, Magic User, Cleric and Thief are opened up to a player who rolls scores that are as strong as these, whereas any player rolling A, B or D will be a lot more limited. But this is a feature, not a bug, as if it is easy to create a paladin, illusionist, bard or monk, then those classes will lose their special aura, their special status. Personally, I would be most happy playing set E, as I do like a wide spread of scores. I like a character to have strengths and flaws coming out of their ability scores. So, what you can see in this instance is that method 1 has created 5 sets of ability scores that are both varied and viable. There are no weak characters. Okay, there's a couple with very few bonuses, but bonuses may be generated using the age and racial modifications depending on other factors when doing character creation. They're all viable. Method 2 next, and this method involves each player rolling 3d6 12 times, and then dropping the 6 lowest scores to produce 6 scores that they can then rearrange in whatever order they choose. And here are those results. Note straight away that there are no single-digit stats here. Removal of the 6 lowest for each set of scores eliminated all of those. And also notice that 6 stats of 15 or higher have been produced in total. Coincidentally, this is the same number as was produced using method 1. Stats are somewhat less variable though, with the vast majority between 10 and 14. Taken as a whole, the characters are slightly stronger than with method 1, and with that lack of flawed stats. So I do think, for me, this is a slightly less interesting method. The players also have the flexibility of rearranging them into any order that they so choose. So once again, the method is perfectly viable and very flexible, if, as I said, a little less interesting, a little less variable. Now we're going to move on to the method that produced that controversial Facebook thread, method 3. In this method, each player rolls 3d6 6 times for each stat and retains the highest. However, the results must then be kept in order. The players cannot rearrange them to suit their tastes, and here are the results I got with this method. Obviously, the stats on the whole are considerably higher. It is statistically highly unlikely to roll any single-digit stats using this method, and stats of 15 plus are much more common. There's still some degree of variability though, as characters A and B are both much more potent than character E. But I don't dislike the reasoning behind this method, and I don't dislike the results. Why? Well, firstly, there are no paladins possible here, and that's always a bonus. But mostly, it is because this method will entice players to move out of their comfort zone. It will make them think about different character options. And though the characters produced by this method have, on average, very high stats, they are far from optimal. We might see fighters with high intelligence and or wisdom. We might see thieves with high charisma. Or we could see strong magic users, and so on. All methods that allow the players to rearrange stats tend to produce characters or certain types of characters with stats laid out in a similar manner with similar priorities. Fighters are likely to prioritize strength, dexterity and constitution ahead of intelligence, wisdom and charisma, because those are stats that fighters tend to lean on more often. But in method 3, they cannot. Certainly a player might not get the type of character that they may be hoping for, but I don't see that as a problem. A good player will see a different type of character as an opportunity. Plus, after all, there's nothing from stopping them from playing a magic user with 18 strength and 13 intelligence. In fact, that might be interesting. Finally, we move on to method 4. Using this method, a player will roll 3d6 in order 12 times and select the stats that they prefer. There is no rearranging. Here are my results from this laborious pursuit. 5 characters, 12 sets of 6 ability scores for each, picking 1 set for each character. I had to make 360 rolls to achieve this. Yes, it has produced a very playable party with some odd stats. You've got a good cleric in here, you've got a perfectly serviceable fighter, you might make a mage thief with that one with the high intelligence and dexterity. There is the variation, there are some opportunities, but it's not an especially strong party, probably the weakest of the four. Though, of course, if you roll 12 sets of stats per player, everyone is bound to get some half-decent options to choose from, but they might not be what they were looking for. Again, that is a bonus. It might take them out of their comfort zone. But really, is it worth that amount of effort? No. So, what have we learned from this? Method 1 is flexible, variable, and effective. That is why it has endured. Method 3 is certainly an interesting option to create very different PCs. I personally would forget the other two methods. Method 2 is okay, but a little bland. Method 4 is just far too much work for what it provides. The original poster in this Facebook group also learnt something, and that is that nerds will continue to argue and never admit that they are at fault, even when it is repeatedly shown to them that they are misunderstanding something and overreacting, because that is what happened. But one thing I am going to mention before I finish is that all the methods listed in AD&D are much more interesting than point-buy methods. And I will stand by that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Till next time, see ya!